Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I'm always curious to know where my stories are reaching. What do you think about Sarah's incredible journey? Have you ever had to face someone who underestimated you? Let me know your thoughts and if you've ever had a moment where you took control like she did. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications because we have an even bigger story coming tomorrow. You won't want to miss it. The cleaning lady who took down the CEO, you won't believe how she did it. I'll never forget the day I walked into Summit Enterprises, mop and bucket in hand, just like every other morning. My name's Sarah Harris. I'm 45 years old, and for the last 12 years, I've been the cleaning lady at one of the biggest offices in New York City. Every day, I'd sweep and mop the same marble floors, trying not to get in anyone's way. The executives, all in their shiny suits, would rush past me, clicking their expensive shoes on the polished floors, acting like I was invisible. And honestly, I had learned to let them. After all, I was just the cleaning lady. No one ever saw me, and that was fine. Or so I thought. But that all changed one morning when Derek Morgan, the CEO, walked into the lobby. He was surrounded by his usual crew of sycophants, smirking and laughing as usual. Then he pointed at me and shouted, "Clean up that spill, Grandma!" as I was mopping near the elevator. The laughter that followed cut through the air, and every head in the lobby turned to watch. My face burned with embarrassment, but I stood there, my mop in hand, my mouth shut, swallowing the humiliation. That moment, that laugh, would be the last time Derek Morgan would ever make me feel small. I couldn't just let it slide anymore. Every night, after finishing my cleaning rounds, I would find myself pushing my cart through the empty office spaces, the city skyline glowing in the background. I had spent 12 years watching Derek and his team of executives treat people like dirt. I'd overheard them laughing about firing employees just to line their pockets, shredding important documents to cover up shady deals. And I kept quiet, mopping away as though nothing was happening, but I was watching, always watching. The night Derek mocked me, something inside snapped. I promised myself he'd pay for that. He had no idea who he was messing with. What would you do if you had been in my shoes, humiliated like that? What would you do if you had a secret that could bring it all crashing down? After that humiliating day in the lobby, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Derek Morgan, the CEO, treated everyone like dirt, including me. But what most people didn't know, what Derek had no idea about, was that I wasn't just a cleaning lady. 12 years ago, my late uncle James, who was a big-time investor, had left me something very valuable in his will: shares in Summit Enterprises. Not just a few shares, but a significant stake in the company. I could have cashed out, walked away, and lived comfortably, but I didn't. I stayed behind, mopping the floors, watching Derek turn the company into his personal playground, firing people without a second thought, squeezing every penny he could out of the hard-working staff while he bought himself another yacht. For years, I stayed invisible. I watched him bully employees, falsify reports, and fire people for profit, all while he lined his pockets. But I didn't say a word. I kept my head down, worked my shift, and quietly kept track of everything: his lies, his treatment of people, his shady business deals. All of it was building up. One night, after yet another incident of Derek mocking the staff, I made a decision. I called my old friend, Michael, the lawyer. Michael was sharp, always ready for a challenge, and I knew I needed someone who could help me make this right. We met at a diner across town, away from the prying eyes of Summit. Over greasy fries, I spilled everything to him: the layoffs, the shredded papers, the way Derek treated people like disposable trash. Michael's eyes narrowed as he listened. Then he leaned in, his voice low. "Sarah, you're the majority shareholder. You have the power to end this." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had the power. All these years, I'd been sitting on a secret, watching and waiting. It was time to stop just observing. It was time to make Derek pay for everything he'd done. I pulled out my phone and showed Michael photos of the documents. I had been sneaking out of the office, emails, and proof of the illegal cuts. Michael grinned. "We hit him hard at the shareholders meeting," he said, and I knew he was right. It was time for Derek to finally face the consequences of his actions, and I was going to be the one to make sure it happened. The days leading up to the shareholders meeting were a blur. I kept my head down, mopping floors just like I had for years. But now there was something different. I had a plan, and I wasn't just cleaning anymore. I was preparing for the biggest move of my life. Every night, when the offices emptied out, I'd slip into Derek's office, my phone in hand, ready to snap photos of any evidence I could find. I'd already gathered so much: emails about illegal layoffs, financial reports that didn't add up, and documents showing how Derek had been hiding the company's true financials. I'd been sneaking these out of the office for weeks, slipping them into my cart, hiding them among cleaning supplies. It was my secret stash, and I knew I was getting closer. Closer to bringing him down. Each night, I'd print the emails I had fished from the trash can, stuff the paper into my bag, and head home. My hands would shake as I read through the evidence, but I couldn't stop. I had to make sure everything was airtight. Every time I caught Derek on the phone laughing about squeezing the little people, every time I heard him brag about firing someone else to make more money, I felt a fire build inside me. This wasn't just for me anymore. It was for every person he had crushed over the years. The night before the shareholders meeting, I couldn't sleep. My tiny apartment felt smaller as I stared at the stack of papers in front of me. Every Lidary dollar he stole, it was all laid out, and I had it. I had the proof. It was time for him to pay. In the morning, I dressed in my cleaning uniform as usual, bucket rattling as I walked into Summit Enterprises. But inside, I was ready. I wasn't the cleaning lady anymore. Today, I was taking control. Derek had no idea what was coming. He was so smug, so sure of his position, that he had no idea that I had everything I needed to destroy him. Today was the day I made him pay. The morning of the shareholders meeting arrived, and my heart was pounding in my chest. As usual, I walked into Summit Enterprises in my uniform, mop and bucket in hand, trying my best to act like I had nothing up my sleeve. But inside, everything was different. I had the power now, and today was the day I would take back control. I could feel the tension building as I walked through the building. Derek Morgan was already at the head of the conference table, surrounded by the suits who thought they ruled the world. His usual smug grin was plastered across his face as he boasted about record profits, oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. The boardroom was filled with chatter and laughter, but as I stood in the hall waiting for my cue, all I could think about was the moment I had worked for. This was my time. Then my phone buzzed. It was Michael, my lawyer. "It's time," his text read. I took a deep breath and pushed open the doors. The room went silent. Every head turned as I walked in, mop in hand. Derek sneered. "What is she doing here? What's this, a joke?" His voice was loud and mocking. The room chuckled nervously, but I didn't flinch. I walked straight to the center of the room, where all the executives were seated, their faces painted with confusion. I took a moment, looking around at the shocked faces, before I spoke up. "I'm not just the cleaning lady, Derek," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I own this company." The silence that followed was deafening. Derek's face immediately turned from smug to pale disbelief. He chuckled nervously, trying to brush me off. "Nice joke, sweetheart. Get back to your mop." The room tensed, but I stood tall, unwavering. I didn't back down. I pulled out a thick folder from my cart and slammed it onto the table. I started reading aloud. Falsified reports, illegal layoffs, emails about squeezing employees, his own words calling people disposable. Derek's jaw tightened, his face flushed with anger. I kept reading, going through the documents one by one, watching as his smirk faded into a look of pure panic. "I've got the shares," I said calmly, "and I've got the votes." Michael stepped in, papers in hand, confirming everything. Derek sputtered, trying to argue, but it was too late. "You're fired," I said, cutting him off. As Derek stood up, red-faced and clenching his fists, the boardroom exploded in whispers. He stormed toward the door, hissing, "This isn't over." But I just stood there watching him leave. "This is my company now," I said, turning to the stunned board members. "No more layoffs, no more cutting corners for profit. And as for the cleaning crew, they get raises starting today." The room was quiet for a moment before the clap started. It was loud, it was real, and for the first time in 12 years, I felt seen. After Derek stormed out of the room, the energy in the boardroom shifted. The tension, The fear and the years of frustration that had been bottled up suddenly evaporated. The board members were stunned, some wide eyed, others blinking in disbelief. But there I stood, mop still in hand, though no longer the cleaning lady they'd once ignored. Now, I was the one in control. The room fell quiet as I turned to face the others. Things changed today, I said firmly, my voice carrying through the silence. No more layoffs for profit. No more treating people like disposable assets. This company is here to support its people. I could feel the shift in the air, the weight of those words sinking in. Slowly, some of the board members nodded, their faces filled with shock and reluctant respect. It wasn't just about me anymore. This was for everyone who had been mistreated under Derek's rule. The assistants, the janitors, the employees he thought didn't matter. They mattered now. I mattered. And I was going to make sure the rest of the company knew it too. Then, with a deep breath, I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I showed the board a photo of the cleaning crew, the people who had been with me all those years, invisible just like I used to be. These people, I said, deserve raises. They've worked just as hard as anyone else here. The room went quiet for a beat, and then a few hesitant claps started. And then the applause grew louder. Some of the staff members joining in, realizing that this moment wasn't just about the money. It was about the dignity we all deserved. Later that day, the news spread fast. Derek's ousting, the reforms I'd put in place, and the raises for the staff became the talk of the office. I wasn't just a janitor anymore. I wasn't invisible. As I left the building that day, I saw Derek in the parking lot, pacing and shouting into his phone, still trying to hold on to whatever power he had left. I smiled to myself, knowing he'd never have control again. By evening, my phone was blowing up with news alerts. CEO ousted in dramatic shareholder coup. I couldn't help but laugh, sitting on my couch, knowing that karma had come for Derek, and it came fast. The next day, I walked into Summit Enterprises, but this time I wasn't in my cleaning uniform. I was in jeans and a sweater, and people looked at me with respect for the first time in years. I felt like a weight had been lifted off me. From that day forward, the halls at Summit had a different energy. People smiled, employees were grateful, and things felt right again. Derek? Last I heard, he was out of the business, selling condos somewhere far from where he had ever once held power. And me? Well, I was just getting started. What do you think about Sarah's incredible journey from being the invisible cleaning lady to taking control of a massive corporation? Have you ever felt overlooked or underestimated? What would you do if you had the power to stand up against someone who treated you like dirt? Sarah didn't just let the world keep walking over her. She turned everything around with determination, strategy, and a well-kept secret. Do you think there's power in waiting for the right moment, like Sarah did? What's the longest you've ever waited to make a move? Let us know in the comments. We love hearing your thoughts and reading your stories. And here's a thought. If you were in Sarah's shoes, what would be the first change you'd make to the company? Would you take down the bullies, or would you focus on the people who truly deserve respect? Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to stay tuned for more inspiring stories just like this one. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Thank you for watching, and let's keep the conversation going.